are delighted to host our debut exhibition of work by Houston artist Robert Pruitt. For those of you who are not aware, Robert was introduced to us by Kerry James Marshall last summer when he included him in the show he curated for us titled Hanging Together. And naturally, we were immediately taken with the work. We knew absolutely it was something that we very much wanted to show. So we're excited to see the solo show come to fruition, and it's fantastic. Welcome also to Toby Kamps, who also joins us by way of Houston and is the curator of modern and contemporary art at the Menil Collection. Prior to his appointment at the Menil, Toby was also senior curator at the Contemporary Arts Museum in Houston and also in Cincinnati. He was the director of the Institute of Contemporary Art, Maine College of Art in Portland, and served as curator at the Museum of Contemporary Art in San Diego. We are honored to have Toby with us today, and I know that they have much to talk about and discuss, so I'm going to let them get to it. Thank you very much.
Thanks for inviting me out here to do this. And I am a museum person who's had the great pleasure of following your career for a little while, and I wanted to start out asking you if you could just talk a little bit about yourself and the variety of things that you do, some of the people you collaborate with, and the whole kind of range of things that you do.
Well, thanks for LA being having this nice weather. Welcoming me.
We're in heaven, I must say.
I know, right?
This is nice. Great.
I do this. This is sort of my it's my solo work, but I also work in a collaborative called Toby Jones and Associates, and we do installations, sort of performances, like actions and those kinds of things. They're very politically driven, and it's myself and three guys I went to college with: Jamal Cyrus, Jabari Anderson, and Kenya Evans. We've known each other for years, and did stuff at the CAM. One of our first shows was at the CAM. So
they were in the Whitney Biennial.
Yeah, we were in the Biennial.
They also had an exhibition at the Menil called Lessons from Below, which was involved a degree of culture jamming works in the collection and raiding the archives.
Actually, that was probably one of our most successful shows, the one at the Menil. The Menil invites artists from time to time, and not that many. You did like Warhol, you did Robert Goldberg, but to come, they have like this huge collection, so they invite artists to come in and create an exhibition based on the materials they have. And so they asked us to come in, and we created this salon-style exhibition. It was a classroom that was sort of based on the Saturday classes that the Black Panther Party would do. So every other Saturday or so, we would have a lecturer come in who would kind of give a talk and educate based on the works that we kind of pulled together. It was the Menil's materials and a few of our own materials, and it was really nice. We had some good turnout, good speeches, or good lecturers.
So I just asked, who are you? Now, who are these characters in the work?
These are mostly friends of mine, people that I kind of know. So I have people come over to the studio, I photograph them, and I work on that. That's where they begin. They begin as portraits of people that I know, but they pretty quickly, I think, grow beyond that. Like I think the structure of it is like my relationship with this person and like my friendship. But then I start adding in all these other materials, and I'm creating like a fictional character. And I think a lot of these people sort of move into that range. They are a group of people who are, what can I say? Their consciousness has moved, right? And I think you and I talked about this a little bit. Like the title of the show is "Them from After the End of the World," which is based on a song title from Sun Ra, a jazz musician who died in the 90s. Sun Ra, he had a song called "It's After the End of the World." Space is a place. It's a refrain that goes, "After the end of the world, don't you know that yet?" Which was always very interesting to me, because I think he's talking about how to move beyond, I think, the limitations of race. And a lot of these things are about being black in the United States and like how to kind of deal with that sort of condition and that boxed in idea. So after the end of the world, it's sort of like what happens when you are no longer contained by that. And I don't mean that in like a post-black kind of way. I don't think it's beyond race. I think it's sort of I don't think it minimizes like the effects of race. I think it removes race and like the ideas of blackness from like these Western descriptions. Just when sort of black folks can now take control of their own identity, their own forms, their own cultures, and like what does that person look like? And in my mind, it looked like these figures. So roundabout answer.
To me, they look. We talked about this a little bit. I got a very strong sense that these are leaders or heroes or people who have some sort of presence and gravitas. And you spoke about them. We used the term awake in consciousness. And what did you mean by that exactly?
That they have recognized that they don't have to be limited by the present definition. So they sort of awoken to like their own sort of control over their destiny, their identity, their culture. I think it's that.
But the title is rather apocalyptic. After the end of the world. Is this a Blade Runner kind of future, or what is going on here?
It's apocalyptic, and like if you can imagine like race. If you can imagine like a world where we don't think of race in the same way, it would totally like flip everything that we do, right? Like if the idea of a black person was not couched in whatever it's couched in, all the different things we see in media, on television, the same for whiteness. Like if we were able to move beyond like our present discussions and actually kind of get to a place where we were on equal standing, then it would destroy everything that we kind of have at the moment. We'd have to rebuild from that. And I think these people are sort of, at that moment, okay, that's dead, now what? So.
But the past, there are many, many threads coming through. There are.
Yeah.
And can you maybe talk about some of the attributes, some of the things people are wearing?
Yeah. So I have a few things that go on. I'll put in these notions of like science fiction, and this is in like all the work that I make. There's science fiction, there's hip hop, and those are things that I'm just sort of my own personal obsession, things that I like. And there's this I think romantic notion of Africa, like this almost like mythic African past, which can get you, I think, in trouble. But it is kind of what I look at as like a source material for people who are outside of that Western understanding of race, right? Before colonization, before those first contacts, and then you had a whole continent of people who were moving and going about their lives without these definitions. So I kind of look back at that moment as an idealization of what could be. So you have that, you have science fiction, you have comic books, you have hip hop. So so this woman, she's wearing this. The dress has like a quilt pattern on it, starburst, which I'll always have references to like space and the sun, those kinds of things. But like her jacket is a leather jacket. And whenever I use those, I'm thinking about the Panthers and like their political ideology. So she has a free Huey button, but also a free energy. And even like her hair is in this kind of generator, pulsating energy things coming out. So it's like how do you like collapse all these different interests into one person's identity, and at the same time it's like expanding who that person could be. She could be a Panther, she could also be into free energy and like dressing nice, and like all those things can exist in the same person.
Well, we're talking about clothing. This woman with the L Saturn, maybe you could talk about the juxtaposition of L Saturn and that black triangular form on her T-shirt.
So El Satin is a record label, Sun Ra's record label, and she's kind of wearing that as like a neon sign, like a crown or something. I don't know, tiara. But the skirt she's wearing is a pattern I saw of the Benin sculpture, and then the shirt has a print by Barnett Newman, who he did the Broken Obelisk, and like there's one in Houston, the Manil, and it's a very strange. I don't want to say strange, but I don't know if it's a as well-known type of thing for him to make. He does only those sort of vertical kind of images. But I found that and just kind of looking for images, and it was interesting to me to have this kind of pyramid shape, because then I can maybe draw connections between like Egypt and like those kinds of histories. But and then like the print was a preparatory piece for the Broken Obelisk, and in Houston that piece, how many of those were made? Like 3 or 4 of those?
Something like that.
So there were a number of this huge pyramid sculpture with an obelisk on top, and one of those was offered to Houston. I don't know, I'm gonna get the history wrong, but it was offered to Houston. I don't know where it was supposed to be, but somewhere near City Hall or somewhere, and it was in memorial to MLK, to Martin Luther King, and the city. We have a very weird, I think, racial history and a very weird like immigration history. I mean, it's bad all over, but I think our particular history was kind of strange and like undercover, and like immigration happened through the collaboration of white business and black business in Houston, and like it's a whole other thing. But like we didn't have a lot of protests and those kinds of things because they would be shut down very quickly. But so this thing was offered to Houston, and they scrapped it, and so the Manils did get it and brought it to the Manils. And it was a very nice piece. But I kind of, for me, like having that kind of image, but in a distanced way, kind of in an abstracted kind of way. I don't know. That's where it comes from.
We spoke a little bit about Sun Ra, who has become an icon of a movement called Afrofuturism. And I heard somebody describe that as sort of talking about the African diaspora as something like Earth astronauts, that they're leaving Africa and against their will, and in this sort of space odyssey of traveling across the planet. And I couldn't help but think of these people, and they have equipped themselves for their journey. This woman has picked up Sun Ra's record label, but also a kind of icon of minimalism, which I would associate with white men, and the 60s, a kind of different era. But maybe you could talk about the woman with the cesium work and the man with the hat. You could kind of talk about the gear that they're carrying or bringing with them.
Just quickly on Afrofuturism, I'm still unclear as to, I think we talked about that too, like the definition. Like, I don't know if there's one definition. I definitely think these fall in it, but I don't know how I would actually define. I think it's still kind of even though it's, becoming an old term by this point, but it's still being worn. This woman, that drawing is called Flux, and she's got all this gear on, all these things, but they all reference time. So like the cesium beam is like some sort of apparatus that it's an attachment for an atomic clock, and an atomic clock can like gauge time, I think to something like a billionth of a second. And so here's this woman, and so she's got a clock on, she's got this like electronic metronome. That little African thing in the front is it's called a slit drum, but it's a drum that you would shake back and forth and it would make a sound, keep a rhythm with it. Everything she has relates to time. So, and I don't think that there's a straight explanation for this drum, but she's a person who is maybe obsessed with time and maybe grabbing a hold of it and like controlling it and engaging it. And she's also pregnant, so I think that there's some something there.
Yeah. I think it's hard to recreate our conversation. So we talked about a kind of lineage of people with different, they bring the perspectives of their time to the question of race and things like that, and you know, he's come along trailing along other images from the past, and you know, of course I take titles literally, and I think about this, you know, precedence of like the movie The Blade Runner, where the future is this actually dystopian place where you're free to borrow from the past and the future kind of simultaneously. And these people, I think, bring this together in a very interesting way. And you talked a lot about movement, and in the sense of a kind of cultural shift, and you know, how are these people bending the future to their vision and their will?
That's a tough question. I don't know. They just the fact that they've sort of taken control of all of these materials, right? All of these histories. Like they've wrestled it from like I guess whoever the purveyors of history are, whoever, what's written in the books, this is not necessarily the only history. And so they're, by carrying these objects and presenting them along with other things, they're presenting like their version of that history, or their relationship to that history, which I think like immediately begins to change like the future, right? Whoever's writing it determines however that.
Yeah. History is written by the winners. Or
that kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, maybe talking a little about science fiction, in particular, Octavia Butler, would be a way to illuminate. You mentioned one story.
Oh, like the Earthseed stuff.
Yeah.
You guys know Octavia Butler?
Yes.
She's a writer, science fiction writer. I mean, when I like a lot of science fiction, but it's mostly through film, animation, those kinds of. I haven't read a ton of science fiction outside of comic books, but she's really, I don't know, especially the Cersei stuff, I really like her. She's a black woman science fiction writer, which I think is still fairly rare.
What was her name?
Octavia Butler.
She died, I think, 2 years.
Yeah, a few years ago she passed away. But she wrote a story about a woman who lived in this dystopian future, and her sort of journey into survival, into adulthood, at the same time creating this like quasi-religion that was based in escaping Earth and like going out to the stars. And so all the different you know, obstacles that, you know, got in her way, she was building communities and they'd be destroyed, and she'd have to start over. And you know, I think there are a lot of like our real world kind of obstacles kind of reflected in that, and but it was just told in a really great way. And so in terms of like, you know, these people being survivors of this kind of, you know, cataclysm, I guess maybe some of that is in there.
I wonder if this is based. Did anybody see the show at the Museum of Jurassic Technology a few years ago about the Russian space program? The guy that went there, the basis of the Russian space program has roots with the Robert Guard of Russia was a guy named Konstantin Tsiolkovsky, who believed the goal of technology was to make people live forever. In fact, it would be so good that you might be able to resurrect the dead, and there wouldn't be enough room on Earth, so you had to colonize space. And this has eerie overtones of this, and especially in the case of the African culture with people whose lives and destinies were so thwarted. There's a kind of redeeming quality that I think kind of dovetails with that. And the idea of leaving Earth is this goal. And of course, you know, I'm the tail end of the Kennedy era, and I feel maybe like some of you a little bit ripped off, because we were supposed to have the metric system, we were supposed to have vacations on Mars, and somehow there'd be a trickle down where we would cure cancer and racism by doing our math and science homework. And you know,
where's that? Yeah. Two things. I just watched a documentary on Ray Kurzweil, because I think you mentioned this before, but we didn't know the guy's name. But this is a separate guy. He's a futurist. He's predicting all these things. He tries to predict technology before it happens, and for him, as a means of like, you know, cashing in on it in a sense. And that's what he's kind of done with his life. But a lot of it has been about him trying to create. Well, he believes like by 2029, man and machine are going to merge by then. You know, we'll all be walking around part human, part machine. And but through this, you know, weird documentary, they sort of suggest that for him, a big part of it was him longing for his father who had died. And he wants to like basically resurrect his father through artificial intelligence, and like I just feel like it has some like resonance with that. Some really trippy stuff. And so he's been collecting all of his father. His father's a musician, all his music, all his memories, and all these things. He wants to feed it into a computer, and one day have this computer sort of take on that consciousness of his father, which is really weird because like, you know, like father died years ago, and you have this machine talking to you. Yeah. He said something else. First of all, there's something else I was thinking. It'll come to me. I'm drawing a blank.
Well, I just mentioned the kind of nostalgia. You know, the future is not what it once was. We were thinking Star Trek. We got, again, Blade Runner, a kind of funkier future. But what about nostalgia running through these works? There's a, you know, harkening back to the Black Panthers and militancy and, you know, fighting the good fight and.
You know, you and I talked about like, you know, nostalgia as like this weird American nostalgia, right? Where there's like, you know, there's like you think about some of this Tea Party stuff, it's nostalgia for
the good old days.
The good old days, right? But the good old days are always like, you know, these moments when black people were kind of in a weird public position, enslaved, or you think of like there's nostalgia for the 50s, but not the 60s. And you know, the 50s at least in how I see like popular culture and media, you know, it's all the suburban neighborhoods after the atomic bomb. So it's nostalgia for this moment after this like, you know, huge destructive thing has happened, but there's this like bounty that came from it almost. But anyway, in that kind of nostalgia, not very many people fit into that. But then I noticed like I have this nostalgia for the 60s, which, you know, I wasn't part of the 60s, I was born afterwards, but still this nostalgia where it seems as if black people had kind of like taken control of these things and like the destiny and the future, and like, you know, that's where these, you know, these buttons and these leather jackets, and you know, I see that stuff and I get amped up and I love it, you know.
Yeah.
So there's definitely that kind of nostalgia going on.
But it's a kind of romanticism,
Yeah.
or the just out of reach, more heroic.
Yeah, definitely. And like, but you know, it's not what's happening, you know. So I don't know, like that's where I said like nostalgia can be dangerous, like because it doesn't fit the real world. But I think it's beneficial in terms of creating myth, and like, you know, these are this is myth making for me, right? Like those myths can prop up your movement in a sense, you know, like not that you have to believe these things literally, but they help you kind of move forward and ground it.
Well, I asked you about precedents for this work, and you talked about one artist in particular, and that you mentioned this artist working in culture. Maybe you can talk
Charles
about,
White.
Maybe you can talk about him.
Or live in Los Angeles, or from Los Angeles?
From
Charles White?
No, he's from Charles White. No, he's from Chicago.
Oh.
But he
taught here
lived
for a
there
while.
too. Years ago.
Yeah. Charles White is like a huge influence. I went to Texas Southern University, which was started by John Biggers. He was one of Charles White's students, so I consider myself sort of in lineage to Charles White, especially, you know, doing these. As a draftsman, he was just like, you know, really incredibly talented, and like, but
Well, he studied with Zuniga.
with who?
Zuniga.
Mexican.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I have to.
Yeah, you have to check that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
No,
I mean, it's
so
just
I mean,
my mind's going like it's going somewhere else. But so like anyway, like Charles White, like I've always liked his work, but I was telling Toby, you know, a friend of mine when I first started Cop Kenya, one of the guys I collaborated with, when he moved to Houston, he was staying with his aunt. So I went over his house one day, and she had a Charles White print, and not like a, you know, I bought this artist print, I just paid all this money for it. It was like this sort of cheap, but like you know, like she bought it somewhere for a few dollars, but it was still hanging in her home. And then I was watching a movie, Five on the Black Hand Side together. You guys see that kind of stuff, but you know, in one of the scenes, I noticed they had a Charles White drawing in the background. Same kind of thing. It wasn't like an expensive, you know, I'm an art collector and I bought this thing. It was this sort of almost not poster quality, but like easily reproducible economically for a large audience. And I realized like his work was working. His work was in people's homes who wouldn't necessarily buy art, right? So it was working in a different kind of way, and it worked. This was in the 60s and 70s, and so I feel like it was operating within the political and cultural moment. Like he's doing these beautiful like portraits of black people, and at that moment, you know, there was a desire for those types of images, and so I was really impressed with like, you know, the need and it being filled, and this artist kind of doing this thing that it just sort of worked within the moment and what was going on. And like, I kind of get a little frustrated in like, well, that's kind of, for me, that's like the ideal thing, right? If my work could work within culture that way. And that's kind of been the thing I've been trying to figure out, like that we're not in the same moment, so the desire for certain kinds of images doesn't seem to exist in the same way. But there is, like, I think we consume images so quickly and so much nowadays. Like, I think there's a desire for images, and particularly, you know, culturally and politically, I feel like these images could work in a certain kind of way. So that's what I was saying, you know, I've been trying to figure out how to do that. And I don't have an answer for it. That's, like, you know, a friend of mine is using an image for an album cover, which is great. Or I think about, like, this woman told me she was going to dress as one of my drawings for Burning Man. Which was like, that made my day. Like really, like my face started beaming. You know, because I was like, oh yeah, like somebody's like pulling it in, and you know, so like, yeah. So I'm just trying to, and this was like just somebody I know on Facebook. It wasn't even like, so I'm trying to figure out how can these things start to operate, and that's my present problem, my present obstacle.
I supported it. Yeah. So what if, would you want to set up a press and start disseminating these? Should these be on a rocket, just like the Voyager satellite?
Oh,
should these be?
That would be great, but that's a whole other thing. That's like, sending them into space, that would just be like an indulgent thing on my part. You know, there's no, so like, you know, yeah, I don't know, like the thing is, like, you know, you could easily start printing these things out as posters and making them available, but I don't even know if that's the ideal way anymore, right? Like, not only do we consume more images, we consume them through different means, you know, through computers and television and movies, and you got your billboard game here is so crazy, like, yeah, I mean, we have billboards in Houston, of course, but like, I just feel like overloaded driving around LA, like, big, and the colors are crazy saturated, and like, I don't want to see friends with benefits, but it's like,
I think you have to go.
yeah, but yeah, I'm wondering, like, what's the route for these things to take, but that operates in a beneficial way within them.
We spoke about this briefly, but I do think the handmade, you know, the love and care that goes into every mark for the viewer is very sumptuous, and it does slow down that consumption. You can't gulp these in, and Friends with Benefits got it, you know, boom.
Yeah,
you've got it.
yeah.
It's really fun to let these, and I had the pleasure of seeing them coming together a couple times too. So it's like, oh, you're looking great now, and I see these people. So, well, I think that's all I've got for you. Maybe some questions. I don't know if you.
Yeah, sure.
A friend from Houston.
Right, our friend from Houston. Here's something called Dreaming Celestial.
Oh, yeah.
When I saw that, I went, oh my God, historicity. You know, serendipity, historicity. I did not know about the space thing. Now it's putting it together. I thought, the moment I saw it, I thought, well, this is where I come from. He's obviously been there, knows about this. You know, in Namibia, in Africa, there's a tribe called the Curator, and the first Europeans they met were dressed in Victorian garb, and they still dress like that. The women wear big turbans, and they dress very long dresses, and they still do that. And we're talking about a place that has a climate of Palm Springs. You know, it's hot.
Yeah.
Africa, and these women, their natural dress is to dress like Victorian ladies with long dresses.
Really?
And so when I saw that, I thought, oh, he went to Namibia, and he saw, and he's now transposing that to an African, you know, a real African, dressed very formally in a very beautiful, formal Victorian gown. But then I thought, now when you were talking, I go, no, that's Uhuru, you know, dressed up, you know, like a Namibian. That's anyway, so marvelous paint, marvelous.
Oh yeah, the you know, she has a pattern sort of stitched onto her top, and it's a constellation for Canis Majors, where the star Sirius is sort of in the midst of that. I had some students over at the studio, and one of the kids was telling me. Anyway, I'll tell you. The star is where the star Sirius is. The Dogon people were these people in Africa and in Mali, and they charted, or they were able to observe this star and the star next to it, which is like, you know, it's invisible seemingly to the naked eye. They did this, you know, pre-technology and all that. And so I kind of harken back to the Dogon as people who have this advanced like knowledge of star systems and this ability to kind of use astronomy and you know, pre-Western contact. But this kid came on the studio and told me that was all fake, that none of that was true. I don't believe him, but that's what he said. But I'm gonna look from, anyway, that's how it is. But, so like she's definitely like looking at the star systems and like incorporating it into herself and into her dress. But she is wearing this sort of European-based outfit because those things are now also part of our makeup, especially in the beard and the face. Well, it was a guy in that the black shirt.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, starting with the statement, for me, what I am really strongly drawn to in your work is these people are human people. They're individuals. These are they have heart. They, you know, and the portraits are going to be successful for a long time as just living people, not as a statement, not as a thing, not as an object. And you know, there's obviously a lot of ideas, but at the core, the people are successful, and I think that's really important. And that avenue, perhaps, toward the success of the images and the culture, the meaning of the images, that's, you know, that path is clear for you, you know, and I think that's really great. So at that, you know, at that point, then it becomes an exploration of just what being human means in this crazy world. I mean, you know, the world, we are now in a world that is thoroughly out of control, and we should not be able to control for, in all rightness. Yet we are obliged to need to deal with a lot of things, you know, better controllers than we are. So there's a paradox, and it seems to me that your work might be about that. Like the work, what I think is, well, I guess then that would be my question. For you, are you okay with if the work has a mysterious quality to it, an open-endedness?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely, yeah. I mean, like these, all this stuff, like that's my baggage in these things, and like, you know, I mentioned Charles White. Like seriously, like I'll agree in some sense. Like at the core of it is, I love to make drawings and I love to draw a human figure. And so I think, you know, if you talk about heart or personality or whatever, like I think that is seen through me trying to get to a certain kind of draftsmanship or trying to pull things out as an artist, drawing a figure, and all the kind of, I don't know, my relationship to that. And I do think it's like completely, well, not completely open-ended, but I think it's fairly open-ended. Yeah.
Talking about the draftsmanship, I'm really struck by it. It's really facile. It's really accomplished. Can you tell us something about your drawing background?
I started drawing by, copying comic books. I mean, I went to Texas Southern, I went to art school. And the interesting thing, like, we didn't learn to draw the figure through live models. Our instructor, so I learned from Harvey Johnson, who was a student of John Biggers, and he would set up things like African sculptures, figures like that, and we would have to draw those. Like, we never drew the human figure. So it was this kind of weird mix of my own sort of understanding from comic books, which is, that's a crazy understanding of anatomy. It's not. And then, and comic book anatomy, it's idyllic, it's heroic, and it's still, it's based on, in a sense, it's based on white bodies, and then to shift to these African figures, and so I think a lot of it comes from that kind of mashup, and then just looking at a bunch of stuff, other artists.
The other question about the art making aspect of it is, it's hand-dyed paper, and are you dyeing it?
Yeah, I dye it.
And why does hand-dyed paper, your hand-dyed paper and the colors you choose appeal to you?
This is new for me. There are two drawings in the front. As soon as you walk in the door, they sort of flank you. Traditionally, that's what I make. I draw on this brown craft paper. It's really terrible non-archival paper. But I've drawn on it for years. I really love the texture of it. But I think I just got burned out on it. And I was telling you, I did 2 shows recently where I just did no drawings at all. I was kind of burned out on drawing. And I did sculptures, I did photography, and now that I'm coming back to drawing, I think I was just over that paper. And so, but I didn't want to draw on white paper. There's one in the show which I'm still uneasy about. But I wanted some colored paper, but I wanted particular kind of brown. So all of these colors you see are me searching for the color I want. And surprisingly, in searching for that, I ended up with these sort of 2 things. These darker ones, I think that these are purple. When I have friends over the studio, they say, no, it looks brown to me. It doesn't look brown to me. So I think there's some weird color things going on. But I didn't like this paper. I got excited to draw in flux. That's the one that's closest to the color I was looking for. That kind of it's almost a glowing gold brown. And I think it's closest to that craft paper. But once I started drawing on this paper, all these other things started happening, and I think I'm gonna, keep mixing it up like that. But I don't know if that answers it.
No, that's an answer I was searching for, because the other side of the coin is, why not painting? Are you not interested in painting, or painting doesn't work for you, or doesn't?
Painting carries a lot of weight and baggage that I don't want any parts of.
Yeah. Okay.
So drawing is it's really immediate, and you can tell that a person's hand was on it, and that's not that it's more interesting. It's just I don't know. Are there painters in here? Painting is. It's heavy. It's heavy with a history that I'm not particularly interested in.
But very interesting listening to you. This drawing, which I'm especially amused by, is as close as painting. It's drawing only by the fact that it's just executed on paper. It's painting.
But it's all charcoal.
Yes, but it's done in the specifically very painterly fashion. So I just wonder, is it just one, or it's something that sometimes you allow yourself?
This is new.
It's a new one.
This is the first time I did it.
And how do you feel about that?
I really liked it. I still like it. I was really excited about it when I did it. I can say, you know, when I came into the gallery tonight, I was kind of looking at it and just wondering if that's like, it does something else. It works in a different way, and I don't know if it's
It's more universal to my eyes. It's like you're stepping out of
Maybe
whatever territory you were occupying as an artist,
Mhm.
and you are joining bigger group.
Yeah, but I don't know if that's where I don't know. I do like it. I'm still kind of confused about that.
Well, it's a beautiful piece. I mean, it's absolutely stunning. It's something to look at. You know, it translates nicely on a digital image,
Mhm.
but there's nothing like seeing it up close and personal.
Mm.
There's just the energy that comes right out of it. You don't get from it.
Oh, yeah.
And if that helps add to your pride, you should take that.
Okay.
Along those,
Oh, sorry, just what is written on his ring?
Oh, Glisa 581b.
What is it?
Glisa, Glise. It's a planetary system like 20 light years from here. It's one of the first systems where they believe like there are Earth-like conditions. So you know, if you're going to travel and colonize another planet, this potentially may be the place. And so this drawing is called Brother Going to Glisa 581b. I did a drawing years ago called Brother from, you know, like and it was a figure with like a Dogon mask on.
I guess along those,
It's a reference, yeah, to black aliens.
along those lines, have you always worked this size?
No, these are actually small. I used to work larger.
Oh.
And particularly drawing larger with that craft paper it was just unwieldy, especially you know in the studio by myself. And sometimes you can afford an assistant, sometimes you can't. So it was too unwieldy, and yeah, and like trying to like the drawings that I kind of keep for myself, trying to protect them, and then like I don't know, you know, drawing that big. I don't know. I just got tired of it.
I have one last question. Sorry to occupy your time, but in the first part of the talk, you mentioned that you work with a group of artists, and you said in part you have a political,
Mhm.
that work has a political
Mhm.
element about it.
Mhm.
Could you tell us something about the political element in it?
So Odebinga Jones and Associates, and I'll tell you more about the group also. Odebinga Jones and Associates.
What's it called again?
Odebinga Jones.
How do you spell that?
OTA
OTA.
BENGA.
Okay.
Jones and Associates.
Okay.
And so it's an organization of 5 members. One of the members is imaginary, and that's Odebinga Jones. So
Okay.
the 4 of us, we create work based on ideas he tells us, and you know he's fictional. So, and he's older than us. He's an elder figure, and he was around when the parents were beginning. His parents were in the UNIA, which is Marcus Garvey's United Negro Improvement Association. So he has this sort of connection to various like black political movements throughout history. And so for us, he's a tangible way for us to connect to those histories and maybe speak with some sort of validity about, you know, the thrust of those things. So we create projects based on a lot of those histories, and especially recently we've been doing projects that kind of, in a sense, recreate some of the programs or actions or things that kind of go on. You know, we've done protests, we've done Saturday classrooms, we've done film programs based on the Panthers. Yeah, so politically it's about a sort of black freedom movement and like maybe a 21st century maybe contemplation on those things.
You could look into Odebinga Jones too. You could research this character who was.
Well, so in our name, the name of the group is based on a historical figure named Odebinga. We put his name together and made one name and then added Jones. But
Didn't they show it Joan Witt?
No. Oh, Jabari did. Jabari's
Oh.
another member of the group.
Because I thought Odebinga Jones was a real person.
A lot of people do. Yeah. I guess that gets us in trouble sometimes too. But yeah, I forget what I was saying.
Odebinga?
Oh, Odebinga. He's a historical figure during the, what is it, the World's Fair, you know, it was in like the early 1900s, like 1905 or something. Anyway, they would, you know, have these zoo-like spaces, right, where they would have people from indigenous places from around the world, Indians, Africans, and all these places, and they would put them on display. Well, he was one of the figures that was brought from Africa. He was a Batwa tribe, which is, you know, we normally say pygmy, you know, and those people, they just like file their teeth down in this this way that's kind of strange to us, in these kind of pointed way. Anyway, he was really small. They brought him over, and he was in the World's Fair, and he had this entire, like, you know, really sad history. He ended up committing suicide. So, and our use of his name is kind of meant to maybe highlight some of that history, even though, you know, we don't necessarily use his figure, but just kind of his name as a reference. So if you're looking us up, you probably come across him.
I'm sorry. Thinking about your nostalgia for the heroic period of the 60s struggle, and just the sort of iconic images that you're making. So, do you have ambitions to make a new kind of imagery or iconology iconography rather for you know, a new heroic age? Is that possible?
Yeah.
I mean, what I'm saying is that it's a very passive, complacent, nostalgia wallowing kind of society that we're living in. I mean, we can't seem to, you know, unseat the people who are in power, you know, liars and thieves that govern us. So, do you think is that an ambition of yours? Are you trying to foment some political action with all this?
I don't know if I could say like a strong yes to that, but I think my desire to have these work in a different place is about like what they could do for people who are seeking it, right? Like they could kind of serve as a grounding for like a little movement and inspiration, if they could sort of be seen in different contexts.
I mean, the title of your show is like very much sort of driven to that point. I mean, we are facing that. I mean, 46,000 square miles of Arctic ice disappearing every day. That's a problem.
That's a big problem.
If you have the technology's not embedded, but many of you have a smartphone, you can click on that Q code and see an animation where there's a speech.
Oh, yeah.
That maybe, I would say you have some sympathies with that idea of consciousness raising, and it's a beautiful speech.
Yeah, if you are Black activists, I think it's a really great speech. So there's one of the drawings over there. It's called Space, and it's a lecture by Amir Baraka, but I kind of put it to the speed, and it's an animation. You can kind of see, but it's these two figures listening to Amir Baraka speaking on this giant, you know, view screen on the, you know, bridge of some spaceship. But he definitely talks about like, you know, how to move. Even though that speech was from '71, but he talks about it like it could work today. Like, okay, you talk about all this stuff, but what exactly are you doing to make it happen beyond like posturing with, you know, violence or these other things? Like, what are the mechanisms that you're creating that will get us to this point? So, I think it's very interesting to think about it that way.
You spoke a little bit earlier about your influences and some aspects of the creative process for you. But I want to know if you can go just a little bit deeper. I want to know, when do you know when you're done?
With the drawing?
Yeah. That would be great. And I just want to know, like, how long did it take you? What went into it? Like, you said you started off with a photograph. You know,
Yeah.
you embellished. You already spoke about adding a little bit more, but how much more do you embellish? And then, like, what is the timeline for a single piece?
It's different for each piece. This piece was really quick, you know, as opposed to like Flux, which took me, it felt like 2 weeks of like just days and days in the studio.
And hours at a time sitting in a room?
So, you know, I was, man, you know, the lady that Kamps would know this, but like I was very last minute finishing some of these pieces, and I feel like particularly like Flux really held me up for a long time. It took me a while to finish that drawing. So I would spend 5 or 6 hours, 7 hours in the studio, kind of working on it. But a lot of times it's like working on it. It's like you work for like 30, 45 minutes, and then you stop and you look at it for 2 hours. So it's that kind of thing.
So what was the struggle with this particular drawing?
Initially it was, because these things happen, so I have this person come over, I photograph them, and I'm working, I have the image here, and I'm looking, and I start by just transferring the image, right? Like I'm looking at it, I'm drawing the figure out. So then I have this sort of blank figure, I have a loose idea of what I want to, make work about, generally, not even like an idea for a show, but generally I'm thinking about movement and progress and science fiction, all these things. So it's basically building up the idea as I work on it. So trying out different things. She had an entirely different shirt on, it had a different print on it that did not work at all, and I had to erase it, and that frustrated me. I went home and left the studio and didn't work on it for a day or so, and, so it was that kind of stuff. And then drawing those individual objects gets a little complicated, and don't look too hard.
So you're not doing any preliminary drawings for
No.
Oh,
Very,
wow.
very seldom do I do that. Very seldom. It all happens like on the...
Then I'd like to compliment you on the assuredness of each stroke. they look really assured. I mean, the strokes, he's nodding his head, I mean, they really...
But that comes
the
from...
contour strokes are incredible.
Mistakes and erasing and going on top. Like, Flux, you can see she has the most, I think, she has the strongest, like, ghost image, right? Where there's, like, this form of getting her figure correct and, like,
I like seeing the process in that one.
Yeah.
That element of process.
I often leave those. I mean, sometimes they just won't erase out. This is on paper I'm trying to figure out. But sometimes it's a little much for me. Like that one I really kind of wrestled with. Like when I finished it, like, I don't know if I like all of that being so visible, but, I sat with it for a few days and I was okay with it.
I think it's because I'm sitting in front of this one the most, but talking about the drawing, if you look at the breast area there, the volume and the weight under just those few lines and this sort of disjunctness of both of them is really quite incredible.
She sent me a text after she saw this drawing. This is my friend Natasha. She said, "Oh my God, you got my boobies right."
Yeah. I don't know about how you got them right for her, but in the drawing, they're incredible. I mean, just the volume of it.
Yeah.
The suppleness of it.
I'm curious about the headpiece.
Yeah.
Do they relate to any African deities?
It depends on this show. This one, no.
This one, and then Saturn has the headpiece. I mean, that's, although it's just words. I mean, to me, they look like they might be significant for some reason.
I mean, when I started doing all these headpieces, a lot of it came from looking at headdresses and like drawing people with headdresses, and then like as I began to use fewer and fewer like African headdresses, and began to kind of create my own kinds of things. So they're rooted in some of that, but they kind of maybe left that a little bit. Like this, I was looking at a drawing for an actual like kind of electric generator, trying to reproduce that as a hairstyle.
We can continue this conversation in person. I think it might be time to open this up, but maybe it's fair to talk about one head attribute that has very strong roots here in Los Angeles, the house party, the Gumby.
Oh, the Gumby. Where's that? Oh, Dreaming Celestial.
Dreaming Celestial, this hairstyle.
Kind of pull-out thing.
The movie House Party.
Yeah, he's like a kid from Kid and Play. High top. But there's a woman, she has a Gumby, which is like a flat top but at an angle. Yes, hairstyle.
That's what it's called, a gum.
Yeah.
Where they were out here.
Yeah, we're out here. You know Jabari. Jabari had that in high school. Yeah. I mean, I didn't know him in high school, but I've seen pictures. he talks about it all the time. Yeah, I'm a comedy, blah, blah, blah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank
Wonderful
you guys
show.
for being patient.
Thank you all for coming.
Enjoy.
Edward, I want to take a picture.